Hi everyone, thank you for coming along to the faculty's event about EDI, wellbeing and everything in between. So this is part of our Ahead of the Curve event series for new students to the faculty and also returning students as well. So without further ado, we're going to hand it over. Well, first I'll introduce our speakers. So we've got Professor Helena Pringle-Back, who is our Vice Dean Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. We've got Professor Samantha Rayner, who's our Vice Dean for Wellbeing, and we're joined by Mr. Same Asaka, who's the EDI Committee co-lead. We've got Karthik here, who is one of our student advisors for, is it for the faculty or for those specific?
English, philosophy, Greek, Latin, and even Jewish.
Okay. And we've also got Helen Hackett here, who's the inclusion lead for.
Who's actually Professor Helen Hackett, whereas I'm not Doctor.
Oh, okay. Apologies. But I'm going to hand over now to Sam Rayner, who's going to introduce wellbeing and the various initiatives around wellbeing for the faculty.
Thank you, Emma. Do you want me to stand up? How's it? No, I can sit. That's good because there's a few of us. Thank you, everybody who's in the room for coming, and thank you to everybody online who's listening. And there will be a chance to ask questions, so I encourage you to do that at the end. That's really what we're here for, to show that we're accessible, real people within the faculty. I just wanted to talk you through a few things, so general UCL wellbeing things, and then a couple of things that we're doing specifically within the faculty. So if you can go to the next slide, please. This slide just shows all of you as students the 24/7 care that's available to you. So I think hopefully this animation will work. This may have been too ambitious a thing to have tried to do in the first week of term. No. Never mind. I think if the slides are available to you all afterwards, it will probably work as a slide, so you will have that. But I will ask Karthik in a minute to sort of fill in the gaps. But basically, there is a lot of support for students here at UCL and within the faculty as well. It's called 24/7 care, and there's a whole range of services that come under that umbrella. So Karthik, who works much more closely with the student wellbeing support team, will tell you a bit more about that.
Yes, so the 24/7 student helpline is there to support you, especially out of hours. During hours, there is your student advisor, which for some of you may be me, but if you Google UCL student advisors, you'll be able to find the student advisor in your department. But out of hours, of course, we still want to ensure that you have access to support. You should be communicated with in terms of how to use the service, how to access the service. If it is a service that you feel you want to use or you may need in the future but not sure kind of where to turn to, please contact your student advisor. We'll be able to kind of walk you through it and let you know all the resources that's available into it as well. I'll use my time here as well just to let you know more about your student advisor who is there as a main kind of point of support, but we're also the kind of the face of student support and wellbeing within the department and within the faculty as well. At UCL, we have a huge range of wellbeing support that's provided for you. The main purpose is because we value you as people, and we know the importance wellbeing places at your kind of within your university experience. Your student advisor is there to kind of chat to about absolutely anything, but if you're not sure where to turn, do contact your student advisor as the first kind of port of call. Email, Teams, in person, it's all available for you. We can also guide you to the wider support that's available at student support and wellbeing. Sometimes it can seem a bit daunting to navigate, but we are in many ways kind of a one-stop shop. We know UCL is a huge organisation with lots of resources, and sometimes that in itself is intimidating. So we can narrowed that down with a quick conversation and find the right resource that's available for you. So really, all we did is just encourage you to stay in contact with student advisor. You'll be encouraged to kind of chat with them at least once a term, but that does not be the limit, really.
And as Kartik says, I think that is an important point. UCL is an amazing place, and there are lots and lots of resources. But I've been here 10 years, and I'm still finding units and bits and pieces that I didn't know existed. So that's really what the team and faculty will do for you. Is if you can't find something, just email one of us and ask us, and we'll point you in the right direction, or we'll find somebody else who will find out for you. But the wellbeing stuff covers everything from sort of really serious health issues right the way through to, I'm guessing this year, because of the sort of economic situation, help with finances, just general stress and anxiety about coping with workloads, not being able to sleep, general anxiety, anything, big or small, as Carter said, we cover the whole lot. So there is help there for you. And we just need you to come and ask us for it. And so, that's partly why we're doing this session, so you know a couple of faces to be able to do that.
Try and find that animation.
Don't worry, if not, we can go on to the next one.
It would be in slice share.
Oh no, it's going to work now. Da-na-na. So this is the sort of long list. I was saying the kind of things that there is support there. As you'll see, is a very long list, but the list, if you look online, if you just search for student support and wellbeing, it will give you lots of different buttons that you can click on that will take you through to the right place. And there is that phone number as well, so 24/7. If you need it, just ring it. Thank you, Emma. Okay, so I think now just a couple of things that we're doing specifically, or have been doing within this faculty to do with wellbeing, both connecting to students in the faculty and to the wider staff, and then to both groups. So Shelf Healing Podcast is something that we ran last year with a small team of students who had the skills. I don't have podcasting skills, so I really respected the fact that we found some students who did know how to make podcasts and who were enthusiastic about wellbeing, and who had some fantastic contacts. Actually, you're meant to find some fantastic contacts. And we did the Shelf Healing Podcast, so you can look it up. It's on Buzzsprout. There's the information on the screen there, and I think there are over 30 different podcasts at the moment, with a wide range of different people, from celebrities, authors, people that work within the wellbeing sort of community for large businesses and corporations, on all kinds of different topics. So it's created quite a nice database of resource, and some of them are quite entertaining, some of them are quite, sort of serious pieces. There's a mix. There's something there, I hope, for everybody. But this was just my chance as well to say that, obviously, because they were master's students that did it last year, they've now gone, they've left, they've all got jobs, which is great. Not so good for the podcast. So if anyone is listening to this out there who does know about podcasts and would like to pick up our Shelf Healing podcast, please get in touch with me, and we can make sure that continues. So that's one specific thing that we're doing. And obviously we are the Faculty of Arts and Humanities. So Reading for Wellbeing does tap in very much to my own personal research. So I teach on the Publishing Masters Programme in the Information Studies Department, and I'm really interested in the way that what we read can help make us feel different things, make us feel better when we're going through certain situations. So again, if anybody's interested in that, do get in touch. So that's that. Emma, thank you. Another general one, and I've just put this in because I know it is being flagged on the UCL website, but nevertheless, we are in Freshers Week, and we all know what that means, that Freshers Flu will follow inevitably quite soon afterwards. So UCL, we're very lucky, you're all eligible for a free flu jab. The link is there again. These slides will be available to you. If you haven't had your flu jab, I really recommend you getting one and taking advantage of that offer that UCL offers to all staff and students. And there's this is a brand new UCL-wide venture. So just something positive and nice to do if you're new to London as well. UCL Central Wellbeing has just launched this Nearby Nature project, which sort of maps out places around London, around campus that you can go to and just take chill out time to go and immerse yourself in some nature. And it's really good. If you have a look on the website, there are some really fascinating places that I would never have been aware of had this not been launched. And it's just come out in the last few weeks for the start of this academic year. So do have a look at that if you are interested in getting some fresh air. And then, before I hand over to Helen, the other thing that we're doing this year within the Wellbeing faculty team, our major project is actually looking at personal tutoring. So both from your perspective as students and from staff's perspective in terms of how we can work together to improve what we do as personal tutors, manage student expectations, because there are more and more issues now that academics can't necessarily help you with, but that's where we're getting people like Kartik and the student advisor team in. It's trying to get that balance right. What do we need that we haven't got? How can we improve what we have got? So again, it's my chance to say to you all, please get in touch. And any experience that you've had around personal tutoring might be from a previous institution that you found it particularly good, or ideas that you think can feed in. Just drop me an email. I'd be really happy to talk to you about that. So that's just a snapshot really of what we do. I'm sure you all have questions later, but I'm going to hand over to Ellen now for a bit of a talk about EDI. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. So I'm Hélène Kringelbach. So I'm Vice Dean Equality, Diversity and Inclusion for this faculty. I teach in CELCS, which is the School of European Languages, Culture and Society, which is not appropriately named because actually some of my courses are on Africa, even though it's a school of European cultures. But historically, that's how it came about. I'm an anthropologist, so I also teach in the anthropology department, which is in a different faculty. But for the purposes of today, I'm here in my capacity as Vice Dean EDI. And one of the things I do is I chair the faculty EDI committee, and my co-chair, Mispa, is here. So we work together with inclusion leads, like Helen Hackett, who is inclusion lead for the English department, to try and create a more inclusive culture in the faculty. And that's obviously ongoing work. So UCL is very strongly committed to making sure that everyone, regardless of their gender, religion, nationality, religion, class background, race, ethnicity, whatever, feels that they belong at UCL and they do not stand at a disadvantage, also regardless of their ability. I don't remember if I mentioned that. So there is an EDI team centrally at UCL, which works on all these different areas to make sure that, for example, there is accessibility across the campus. That's one of the weak points at UCL, but there is a team working on that. But also to make sure that all the teaching resources are accessible to everyone, regardless of their ability. To make sure, for example, that if people need special adjustments due to dyslexia or other forms of neurodivergence, they can get special adjustments and they can get support for that. So there are lots of different areas which UCL is generally committed to improving, but no university can say at this stage that they've got it right. I'd be very worried if anybody said, well, we've got it right, there's a job done. Actually, I don't think it ever happens that it's job done, because society changes and these things need to be worked on constantly. So it's a huge amount of work, but there are resources, there are people in your departments and in the faculty who can help, whom you can turn to for support. And I just wanted to give you examples of some of those resources today. So probably the most important person in your department in this respect is the inclusion lead. And I let Helen talked about what some of the work which has been carried out in the English department in the last few years, but your inclusion lead, you can easily find out who it is someone you can always turn to find out what work is being done in the department to address some of these issues, or for example, to transform curricula so that they're more inclusive, so that they are less conventional, so that they better reflect the world as it is today, for example. The EDI committees, most departments have an equality, diversity and inclusion committee, which includes not only staff who volunteered to work specifically on these issues, but also student volunteers. So if you are interested in those questions, do volunteer to be a student rep on the EDI committee, and I'm sure departments and colleagues like Helen really value the contribution student reps on the EDI committees make. We're also going to have student reps on the faculty, the Arts and Humanities EDI committee from this year. We'd also like to have student reps. The student contributions, student voices are very important, and actually no EDI work, in my view, should ever be done without the collaboration of students. So that's also something we're working on improving. Now, I particularly wanted to draw your attention to the report and support platform. So Sam mentioned that the helpline is able to address issues like bullying and harassment and sexual misconduct. Now, there's probably a bit of overlap, but this platform was designed specifically in 2019 for students and staff to report instances of bullying, harassment, sexual misconduct, racism, anything students want to report, either in a named way. So you can go to the platform, report an incident, leave your contact details, and then a dignity advisor, for example, or someone specialized will contact you to know more about what happened and will address the issue in a confidential manner. Or if you do not want to be named, you can also report an issue in an anonymous way. And that's very important, because even if you want to be contacted, obviously, if there is a persistent issue of harassment, bullying, or sexual misconduct, or whatever, in a given department, if a sufficient number of people report it anonymously, then it will create a hotspot and it will be investigated. So I know it can be intimidating sometimes because people may fear the consequences and they're not too sure what happens if they report things, but even anonymously is better than no reporting. And the platform makes it possible to do that. If you want someone to contact you, obviously you have to leave your contact details. But do remember that you can use report and support anonymously, and it can be for anything, any issue, any incident or event in your life that needs to be addressed. And that's specifically linked to the life of the university. So this is very, very important. It's getting more used than it was at the beginning, but still not enough students know about it. So that's why I wanted to draw your attention to it. We have faculty EDI events we organize on a regular basis. Departments also organize their own EDI related events. So just to give you a couple of examples, last year we organized a conversation, an online conversation on autism. We'd invited a young woman who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 27 a few years ago, who's now turned her life around, is training to become a clinical psychologist, and she joined us to speak about her experience growing up as someone who did not know that she was autistic, the experience of being diagnosed, and the way in which her life has changed since then. And she's now trying to help other women in particular, because there seems to be a particular issue with women being less likely to be identified as autistic than men, because generally women are better at social relations, and it means that women are also better at, masking and reproducing the kinds of interactions they observe in other people. So we had a really interesting conversation with her about this, which is available online. We also organized a really fully booked event with Lilian Thuram, who is a former captain of the French football team, very famous French football player in the late 90s and early 2000s, who since his retirement has done a lot of work in trying to educate school children all over France and elsewhere on the effects of racism and on the construction of race in French society particularly. He's written a couple of books, and the latest one is called White Thinking. It's on the construction of race in society and its effects. And he's a very, very eloquent speaker. So we had a whole lecture theatre that was completely full. We had 200 people following online. And there was a wonderful discussion which involved MISPA. So MISPA was actually the person who took the initiative, invited him and organized the whole event. And we had Professor Paul Gilroy, who was also in conversation with Lilian Thuram. So just to give you an example of some of the events we organized, they're on different themes, although MISPA and I have a particular knowledge of questions of race and ethnicity, we're also interested in other things. and we try to, to address all these different aspects of EDI as much as possible. Many departments have been working for years now on transforming their curricula to make them more inclusive, more reflective of the contemporary world, as I said, but also to address some of the students' interests in various areas today. And I won't say any more about that because I think Helen will talk a bit about what they've done in English. And I forgot the student union sabbatical officers. One of your most important resources are the student union sabbatical officers. It can be very difficult to turn to staff. I mean, of course, always start with your student advisors, with your personal tutors, but in some instances, you may want to discuss a particular issue with another student rather than with staff. Turn to your student union sabbatical officers. They have a lot of experience in a given area. So there is, a sabbatical officer who may be specialized in gender, LGBTQ issues, another one on ability, questions of ability and disability. You can talk to them in confidence, and if need be, they could be the link with your department to raise issues which you may not want to raise directly with a personal tutor or with the staff in the department, for example. So they are a supplementary resource, and they can also be very important. The EDI support that's available at the central level, I put the link here. Perhaps could we click on this just to give a sense of the different areas where support is flagged. And this is maybe then at the central level, where we have a wonderful central EDI team at UCL, a whole group of people who are each specialized in different areas. Come up. Maybe if you copy the link. And it flags also various areas of training. So staff, for example, who want to be better equipped to deal with certain issues in the classroom, or who want to be better equipped to foster diversity, more diversity in appointments, have to undergo training, which is also available through the central EDI team. So there's a lot of work in the background, which you may not always see, but staff always work constantly to educate themselves in all these areas so that we can, that's one of the ways in which we can create a better environment for everyone, is if we all collectively make the effort to know more about those different ways in which people experience life. We know that people experience life very differently depending on all these different shoes they walk on, and we can't know what it is to be another person, but we can try to educate ourselves a bit more so that we at least get some insights, a little bit more understanding of what it feels like to have a different background, to be different. So if you go down, that's what I wanted to show. You have all the things that UCL is doing in terms of disability, LGBTQ+, religion and belief, gender, race equality. And so please do take a look at all these different areas. If you are interested in some in particular, there are opportunities to also become involved, but it will also give you an overview of the resources available. You know, some students may, for example, have questions about what UCL does in terms of fostering equality in terms of religion, for example. There is still work to do. You know, there are students, for example, who, due to their religious affiliation, may be unable to attend classes on a Friday afternoon. So there are debates as to, you know, could UCL actually avoid scheduling classes on Friday afternoons? Is there a capacity to do that? Should it be done? You know, some of us think, yes, you should avoid classes on Friday afternoons. Estates may say, well, you know, we don't actually have enough rooms to avoid scheduling classes on Friday afternoons, but those are some of the discussions going on in the background, and they have a very real impact on the lives of students. So, but the idea is always that no one should be at a disadvantage, regardless of who they are. And so whenever possible, everything is done to avoid that. I will just, I think, hand over to Helen, and I'm sure you will have questions. But given that the real work on these issues is, in my mind, done at departmental level, I thought it would be very good to have someone who has worked on these issues in the English department.
Thanks very much, Helen. And yeah, thanks for that really thorough roundup of you know, how EDI is being addressed at UCL. Yeah, so I'm here to give an example of how that works at a departmental level. So I thought I'd just tell you about a few sort of highlights and headlines from EDI activities and advances in the English department, mainly over the last few years. But I thought I'd actually start by going a long way back, because this is not just a recent concern or interest of ours. If we go right back to the 1990s, we actually, in the English department, set up a course then called Literary Representations and the History of Homosexuality, which was an initiative by a colleague of mine called Professor Peter Swab. And that's a course which has only gone from strength to strength over the years. All our courses are team taught. So many of us, I teach on that course, many colleagues teach on that course. It's not just taught by Pete. And it's proved very popular with students. It's grown and grown, and it's a place where we can discuss all kinds of LGBTQ+ issues in relation to writing and representation of LGBTQ+ people and concerns in writing. So that's something that's been going on, you know, for decades now in the English department. We've also, across all our courses over a period of years, been thinking a lot about how we teach authors of colour, making sure they're represented, making sure there's space to discuss issues of race in writing. Some of the ways that we've done that, we have a first year core course which is compulsory called Narrative Texts, and it takes students through basically a kind of historical canon of key texts from the 16th century up to the present day. And of course, because it's really saying these are major works, it tends to sort of lean towards a traditional canon. But over the years, we've tried to work hard to make sure it doesn't just represent white men, that we have female authors on there, that we have authors of colour on there. So that's a place where over the years more and more work has been done to make sure that it is a diverse course, that some diversity is built into that course. In the third year, all students do Shakespeare, and we have what we call sign-up seminars within the course where students can choose to specialise a bit more. For a long time now, for about 10 years now, we've had an option within the Shakespeare course on Shakespeare and intercultural encounters, and that's again an opportunity to explore how Shakespeare is writing about race, about encounters with various kinds of others, and how that relates to the context of his time. All the debates about, you know, is a play like Othello racist or anti-racist? There's all sorts of complexity there in Shakespeare that we can use in really valuable ways to explore these issues. And we've also had since 2020 an extracurricular seminar series called Race, Power and Poetics, which was set up by two colleagues of mine, Dr. Zhang Yao and Dr. Rachel Holmes. And that's brought in, it's been online up to now. I'm not sure what the plans are for this year, whether it will be online or in person, but over the last couple of years, it's brought in actually a really distinguished and exciting array of international guest speakers. The online format, of course, is something that enables that. And that, again, has been successful and really worthwhile, I think. Another area of EDI activity that goes back a little while in the English department is thinking about how best to support women in the department, both female staff and female students. So in 2017, we set up a women's forum, which was for staff with regular meetings, but also one of the things we discussed there was not just matters of staff concern, but very much how we best support female students. So that's been going for a few years now. We've actually just recently reconfigured it. So rather than having termly meetings, it's going to have an annual meeting, and otherwise it will operate more through online communication. So we've renamed it the Women's Network, but it will continue to have the same purpose of giving female members of staff a space for discussion, opportunities to offer each other mutual support, and also often through that thinking about what structures we have in place, what kind of lines of communication there are for us best to support female students. And then a major event for us was that in 2020 we set up our Departmental Equality, Diversion and Inclusion Committee, which presently I'm chairing as the inclusion lead in the department. So our EDI committee, it meets at least once a term. It can meet more frequently if there's a particular issue or set of issues that people feel need to be addressed. It includes both staff reps and student reps from all the undergraduate year groups, each VMA programs and the PhD community. And the committee strives to be as responsive as possible to issues and concerns raised by students. The agenda is very much student-led. Some of the main progress that I think we've made, some of our main achievements over the last couple of years, we had a very thoughtful and profound discussion of use of the N-word and formulated a departmental policy on that to ensure it is never used in teaching, even when reading from or quoting an original source. We've also had a lot of discussion, very much student-led, about how we deal with sensitive content in teaching materials, and we've formulated a departmental policy and statement on that, so that the position on that is quite clear. We've also recently made a new appointment in post-colonial literature, Dr. Lara Choksi, who joined us a year ago, who's already a fantastic colleague and making a real difference in the department. One of the main initiatives that she's leading, we appointed her to lead on this, is she's setting up a course called Colonial and Post-Colonial Literatures, which actually goes on stream this term. So we're very excited about that. As I said, all our courses are team taught. So again, many of us are teaching on that. I'll be giving the second lecture on that course the week after next, which will, I'm a specialist in the early modern period, so I'm going to talk about kind of early period covered by the course, the sort of pre-colonial or early colonial period in relation to literature. So that's very exciting. We're very pleased to be doing that. We've also just made a new appointment in World Englishes, Dr. Guianne Wilson, who we're very much looking forward to what she will bring to the English language side of the department. We're a department of English language and literature, so she'll be working more on the language side on World Englishes. And we recently had a working party of the EDI committee, which was looking particularly at the representation of women and feminist criticism and feminist theory across our course. And in particular, we sort of honed in on, we have another compulsory first year course called Intellectual and Cultural Sources, looking at the backgrounds and sources for English literature. And the first term of that course, the autumn term, is very much based around classical texts, ancient Greek and Latin texts. So again, there tended to be a predominance, well, in fact, it was entirely male authors. So we've had a good think about how can we bring in, it's difficult often to bring in representation of particularly female authors in earlier periods. But what we're doing, we're bringing in Sappho, we're bringing in Antigone, as well as Oedipus as a set work. We're bringing in more, we were already using Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey. We're now going to use a translation of the Aeneid by a woman, which has been very acclaimed, Shadi Barcher's new anthology. So we're thinking creatively, again, often in student-led ways, about how representation of women in different ways can be increased on various courses. Also on our Renaissance literature course, where I'm one of the main teachers. Our first set work on that course this term is going to be an anthology of poetry by Renaissance women poets. And I'm very excited that, because often what happens on courses is women or people of colour, they tend to get sort of added in at the end. But actually on the Renaissance course, we're now putting women up front, and we're going to use writing by women as our way into the Renaissance course. And I've realised, I'm going to be doing the lecture on that anthology, that it's a fantastic way into thinking about so many issues, so many genres within Renaissance writing. I think it's going to be an excellent gateway into the period. So I'm really pleased we're doing that. And also another new development this term is some of our students have got together. It was an initiative actually proposed by undergraduates, but will be led by a couple of PhD students who are organising a reading group on feminisms. And that's going to meet fortnightly through the next 2 terms. They've already got a fantastic programme of topics and speakers lined up for that. So that's happening. So things are happening, you know, things are going on, which we're very excited about. I want to underline what Ellen was saying earlier about it's never enough. You know, there's always more to do. It's important to be kind of pointing in the right direction and moving in the right direction, but there's always a need to be going forward because there's so much to be done. I'm thinking, you know, as we enter the new academic year, the new term, and in my position as inclusion lead, I'm thinking what might be the discussions we need to have going forward this term. I think, as Sam mentioned earlier, I think, you know, student hardship is obviously going to be a big concern for all of us and a big issue, and that is going to be affecting students in disadvantaged groups more. So that's something that EDI reps, EDI committees will no doubt be talking about and thinking about. We'll be looking at the kinds of provisions that UCL is putting in place, whether they're enough, maybe do we need to be kind of making the case for more to be done. That's something we're bound to be looking at, I think. I think also in our particular department, I can't speak for other departments, but I feel like the EDI committee so far hasn't talked a lot about disability. And I'm very conscious of that as a disabled person myself, because I'm deaf, I'm a hearing aid user. And I think that's an area where there's scope for more conversations and for some consciousness raising and thinking about whether we're doing enough and thinking enough about what we need to do in that area. Throughout all of this, we do totally rely on the input of students. As I said, many of the EDI committee's discussions and initiatives have been very much originated from, generated by students and often taken forward by students. So it's really important for students to get involved and for us to be able to hear your voices. We want to have dialogue with you, we want to listen to you. It's from you often that we learn, you know, what should be done, what we need to be thinking about. So do please consider coming forward as an EDI rep. As I said, we have EDI reps from various kind of sectors of our student community on the English EDI committee. So we're looking for those reps this week and next week to come forward so we can set up a committee for this term. If you're not in the English department, in other departments, there'll be your own departmental committee, there's a faculty committee. Do think about whether you'd be interested in taking on one of those roles, because we would really, really value your contributions. And I think that's all I wanted to say.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks, Helen. I should also mention that my co-chair, MISPA, who's at the moment, you're still on secondment, right?
Yes.
Are you back to?
I should be back soon, I think. I don't know.
So MISPA is normally the manager of the doctoral school of LAP, the London Arts and Humanities Partnership, which includes UCL and other institutions. So she has a huge experience in looking after research students in particular, but of course research students have been undergrads and master students before they get there. So I should probably say that she has a huge experience in supporting students generally. And so any questions you may have can also be directed at her. So yeah, I think that's us.
So I think now we're going to go to questions. Does anybody in the floor have any questions? If you do, just raise your hand. And online, I don't know if you can hear me, but put your hand up in the chat as well. Or do you want people to talk? What would be the first step to bringing more diversity, like inclusion of disabled students and teachers? Where would you start with that?
Yeah, can I? Sorry,
Yeah, please go.
just from because I'm not an academic, so I work in professional services, and the point that Ellen and Helen made, obviously, is the fact that a lot of departments are working on changing the curriculum, but it's also important for you students to tell us what your experience is, especially if you've got a declared disability. It could be access, it could be around, obviously we have processes to support reasonable adjustments, but sometimes they don't work. And I know it can be very daunting, especially when you start in university to say that you're not happy with something, but I would stress that it's very important that you speak to a student advisor or to your student union to say, actually, I'm not happy with this. So we need to learn more about student experience, and as Helen said, perhaps also thinking about how to hire more academic staff to represent what the student population is in the academic areas of CRL. So that's my answer.
I think I also want to think more about disability in teaching. So on the narrative text course that I mentioned, the second work we do is Paradise Lost. The third work we do is The Rape of the Lock by Alexander Pope. And there's been a lot of exciting research recently in disability studies in the early modern period and how we can kind of bring that to bear on literary works. And it kind of gives you a different perspective on those authors, because they look as if they sort of tower over the canon as the archetype of sort of dead white men. But actually, of course, Milton was blind. Alexander Pope had a condition that meant he had restricted growth and he had physical disabilities. He was in constant pain. He was very conscious that he was probably never going to marry, didn't marry, would never have children. I mean, I think these are important factors in their writing, the fact that they were also disabled people. And I think we need to recognise that almost everyone actually engages in EDI issues in one way or another. So I just want to, I feel I haven't incorporated that enough in my teaching so far, frankly, and I want to think about it more and sort of get students thinking about it, as well as setting that in the context of what matters to us in the here and now of, is there adequate access for students around campus? Are we giving adequate support to students with hearing loss, with sight loss, with neurodivergence? There's a connection between what we study and the world in which we're studying it. So all of that is what I think, could be kind of addressed a bit more in a kind of joined up way.
Are there any questions online? Any other questions? Yes. Because I come late, I was moving away. Now there's an interesting program that shared hearing and nearby nature. If a student wants to participate, just need to went to the website and register this email.
So for Shelf Healing, if you are interested and you want to take part, just send me an email. I think my email address is on the contact slide at the end. It's just s.rayner@ucl.ac.uk. I'll probably see if Georgina can help me send an email around to all departments to ask students if there are any volunteers. It'd be really nice. When we had it as the first year, it was just from my department, information studies, to see whether it would work. And I think this time I'd like, again, representation from across the faculty. If we could get, people from different departments. So that would be fantastic. If you're interested, please do get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Because otherwise it's just sitting, it's just waiting for somebody to take it on. And that would be fantastic. The Nearby Nature, is that the other one that you asked me about? Yeah, so that is run by the So we have a Wellbeing at UCL team. So they sort of sit at the top above the faculty level, and they do wellbeing things. And this is one of their initiatives that's just started. So I think if you go on the Nearby Nature site, there's probably a contact name there if you want to get involved. But otherwise, if you can't find it, again, just email me and I'll find the person for you. I know the team. I just don't know the specific person within that team right now, but I'll find out for you if you drop me an email.
I've moved on to the contact slide now.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
You can take that down. Does anybody else have any questions? May we know what department or what programs everyone's doing? Because it might be good to find out.
Archives and records management and information service.
Departments. What are you doing?
Doing European covering stuff, but I'm trying to choose then a margin from a comparative literature. I think it's called comparative theories because I have imbalance of workflow to terms, but I haven't received any feedback, so I don't know how to do that.
I've done a comparative revision of the application. I'm doing BA Fine Arts.
And they might ask media.
I'm doing BA English. I saw myself on your seminar this time.
Oh, brilliant. Great. I'm so pleased. Yeah.
Really interesting. So, were there any final questions?
I would like to know in what sense is the business advisor different from personal tutor?
Very
So,
good question.
so the person tutoring and the student advisor, they're an equal support in very different fields. So your person tutor sits in a very kind of academic space. So if you, a good example is if you are struggling with an essay, you will go to your person tutor with your essay plan to maybe have a review of your essay, talk about readings needed for the essay. But the other side of writing an essay is your well-being, managing your workload. Are you sleeping okay? Do you feel burnt out? And all the other aspects that feed into your academic side. And that's where your student advisor comes in. So it's the idea that your academics affect your well-being and your well-being affects your academics, and you've got advisors on both sides.
Okay, we do have a few final notices as well. So we just wanted to tell you about some of the other events as part of the faculty welcome series. So there is an event on sustainability tomorrow. There's a session with current students on Wednesday where you can ask them anything within reason. And that's next Wednesday afternoon. And then the season finale is our debate. So we're running the ANH debates where we have a few academics from across the faculty debating whether arts and humanities are good for your health. We've touched on quite a lot of that today, actually, so that should be very, very interesting. And I think it will culminate in a vote at the end, so you can see which argument you think prevails. And other than that, just to flag that the UCL Wellbeing Hub is up and running in the Student Centre at the moment and will be around throughout Welcome Week. So you can go and find out more and carpet.
Just a quick plug, if you go to the Wellbeing Hub, is where you can get a free water bottle. Here we go. So, yes, I will bribe you to go somewhere. There we go. There's a good example.
And they had therapy dogs there earlier today.
Yes.
So that was also
Nice.
definitely boost to our well-being. So yeah, do go to the link there to find out more about what the wellbeing team is doing. Welcome. But I'd like to say thank you very much to all of our wonderful guests today. It's really, really informative. I hope you got a lot out of that. I know I did. And the recording will be available if you wanted to have a recap of anything. And then I'll just put the contacts up there again as well for you. But thank you very much for coming, and thanks again to our guests.